Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're talking about how to create a study process for your comprehensive exam. So in my previous video, I talked about the importance of having a study process, right? So that video was focused on if you should have a study group. And I said that really what was critical, be it if you're in a group or just doing this work solo, is that you have a study process. And what I mean by study process is what I want to get into in this video. So I really think there are two key aspects to having a study process. One of those is, related to the readings, the literature, and the other is related to writing. Now, I'm going to go over those broadly here. And what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to drill down into a group versus solo. I'm just going to kind of give you a big picture perspective. But do know that if you do decide to sort of take these guidelines, tweak them a little bit, and work as a group and develop a process as a group, you're going to want to have some clear guidelines and expectations about what you're doing week to week. All right, let's get into it. So, with the literature, all right, for starters, you need to figure out what you're supposed to know. So make sure you identify the seminal pieces and then any other, I'm going to say secondary pieces, right? Just pieces that are not the seminal ones, but any other secondary pieces that are very important and critical for you to know as well. Now, sometimes some programs have a reading list. So obviously if your program has a reading list that's attached to comprehensive exams, you may just be expected to only cite off of that, so use that list. Or it might be that you're expected to cite off of that and then some, and you might need to create a supplemental list. And sometimes you get to construct a reading list or maybe partially construct your reading list. But get clear on the procedures of what you're expected to read and know and cite so that there's no confusion and so that you don't waste your time identifying and reading pieces, okay? And then the other thing to know is this open book or not open book? How well do you need to be able to really know this, right? So if it's open book, obviously you just kind of need to know it well enough to know what piece to reach for. But if it's not open book, you're going to have to know it, memorize a lot of stuff in way more detail. You're going to want to give yourself time for that. Okay, so what do you do with these texts? Well, you're going to want to identify the arguments in each piece. You're going to want to know how it is situated historically, okay? You're going to want to be able to understand its contribution to the field. There may be other things in there that are important for you to know. Again, each program has its own specifics and nuances, but for sure, those are going to cut across, okay? So again, make sure you're up to date on policy and expectations. Talk to your advisor or the appropriate faculty member about this, but identify the arguments, know how the piece is situated historically, and know the contribution it made to its field. That'll at least get you started and moving in the right direction. Now, when it comes to writing, remember, comprehensive exams are about showing you have command of the literature and that you can answer the question being asked, making an effective argument, all right? It's not a summary. Do not summarize research pieces and whatnot, okay? Don't do that. You're using those pieces to make an argument first and foremost. But beyond that, it's going to be very important because there's other pieces, other parts, right, to the paper. It's not just making an argument, but there's different sections and etc. You might be doing an essay. You might be doing a literature review. I had to do both, okay? So you need to understand the structure, right? If you're doing an essay, what's that structure look like? What are the components of a good essay? If you're doing a literature review, the same thing. What are the components of a good literature review? How is it structured? And then within that, once you know those frameworks, what are your weak points? So for example, when I was in grad school, my weakest point was writing an analysis section. And I had to write a lit review for comps, which meant I had to write an analysis section, okay? So be very honest with yourself about your weak spots, all right? If you're past the first year in the program, you should already have a sense of where those weak spots are, okay? Now, to cycle back to the previous video, do you need a group? A group could definitely help you with the first part of this, with the reading of the literature part, all right? They may or may not help you with the writing aspect. So you might just want to have a study group that has a process for reading and discussing the literature that's going to be on your exam in a very effective manner, right? Is looking at arguments, is looking at how it's situated, is looking at its contribution and having those discussions, okay? You don't have to focus on writing in your comps group, okay? But that being said, once you've identified your weak points, if you identify them, I would say by the second year in your PhD program, then you definitely have time to work on it, okay? Because you can use your course papers as opportunities to work on those weak points, all right? If you're closer to the point where you're getting ready to take comps and maybe you're just one semester away or you're taking them next week, right? Then you're going to want to have a meeting with your advisor to talk about what you can do to address what you see as the weak spots in your writing, and also to get feedback from your advisor on if you're accurate. Are the weak spots that you think are the weak spots, are they really the weak spots? Maybe it's not as bad as you think. Maybe it's something else, okay? So having a conversation with your advisor about weak spots and what to do can be very proactive and productive. But again, if you've got time, you should be able to work that out through the papers that you're writing in your courses.